Hello. Happy 4th of July if you're joining us on this beautiful Friday. We are super excited. Our channel is doing awesome. We got over 300 subscribers. Clap it up. That's a win for Subaru land. Dave and I have been just working away this week, just trying to get a lot of work done. I know Dave had a crazy project he tried to finish tonight, actually, recording the night before 4th of July. So this is a fresh episode. And yeah, Dave, tell them about how fast you put a clutch together today.
Yeah, so it was an interesting day to say the least. At the end of yesterday, which would be Wednesday, we called our parts supplier and ordered a clutch kit for a vehicle that got dropped off on late Wednesday night because we knew we needed a clutch kit. And as of this morning, Thursday, we woke up and we got into the shop and got a very, very respectful phone call from the parts manufacturer, the supplier. And they said, yeah, we got that clutch, just confirming it. We're sending it out for you, this morning. As of 2:00 this afternoon, mind you, we close at 6:00 Colorado time. We still didn't have a clutch. We had the transmission out and clutch off and ready to go. And so I reached out to the supplier and they informed me that they were not sure as to why that didn't go out, but they'll certainly look into it and figure it out. About 20-30 minutes later, I get a phone call back. Apparently that clutch, unfortunately, got delivered to the wrong shop, which unfortunately is a par for the course, as they say in the industry, where, unfortunately, we're now, the car is expected to be finished that day before a long weekend. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that clutch till much later at that point. Fortunately, the supplier was really, really fantastic. They rushed out an order to us, got it to us as quick as they possibly could, which turned out to be 4:00 in the afternoon. So all hands on deck. Me and one of my guys today actually decided to tag team it, electively, and we got it knocked out with the clutch fully installed, car pulling out of the bay by 4:30.
Just crazy.
30-minute clutch install between two guys.
And that's what you get with a super professional. I mean, literally, I don't know many shops that would be able to slap that together in 30 minutes. So, I mean, if anybody's in the Colorado area and you own a Subaru, you need to go to Dave.
And that being said, not knocking your statement there as far as like slapping things together. We actually still employ our company policy, which has always been in that every single bolt that gets torqued, which every bolt gets torqued to proper spec, is actually paint marked. We humbly use blue just because it fits, our branding. So we decided to get a bunch of blue paint markers. And so disregard to anyone who gets any work done in our shop. If you notice there's a bunch of little tiny blue dots on every bolt, there's a reason why, is because that's our quality control in a sense, and making sure that even in the midst of two guys working on the same job, that we're making sure that everything is still perfect and buttoned up properly.
See, I love that. That is like the touch that you get with private shops that the dealerships don't do. They don't care. And like, I've always been a big fan of that. Torquing things is so important, and checking torque specs and getting everything exact. And, some people may say, oh, you can just hammer on a lug nut and send it on its way. But like, at the end of the day, it's not right. And whatever is not right is not right. It's just the way it is. I feel like,
and you hit it one thing that it does become, I think, more challenging when you're an independent shop, let's say, that works on multiple makes and models. Not to say any less of those establishments, but it is ever more challenging when you're working on different makes and models. So, for example, again, like you highlighted a second ago, as a Subaru only shop, well, we don't necessarily have to go looking up torque specs on everything because we know them offhand.
Yeah.
We've memorized them. It's part of our repertoire to where we automatically know what the torque specs are for 90% of the things that we're dealing with. Now, a new thing comes in or something that's a newer platform. Certainly, Ascents is a good example. When those came out, we wanted to make sure we went over specifics and made sure that we were still applying those same specifications. But it is something that is a little bit easier, certainly for us, because all we do is Subaru. So it's not to the disadvantage of every other shop, but I think it's more to the advantage or the accolade of every other shop that does take that attention to detail and torquing everything. And there are definitely shops out there that do that, and all the more respect to them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a great practice and it keeps everything straight. So, um, we also wanted to shout out while we're talking here, Jeremy Stegman, who came out of the blue out of our Subaru Mechanics group and was following the podcast. Amazing guy. He has been so helpful. He's been sending shorts out for us. He's been, basically creating them in the background. And like, as somebody who is a graphic designer and works within Premiere Pro and knows how to do video editing, I can tell you the stuff that he's doing that I'm watching in like his process is like insane. And like he's so talented and does all of these video edits. Like honestly, if anybody needs any video work, this is the guy. And I definitely think you guys should check him out.
Yep.
So we just wanted to
Jeremy's
throw that out
absolutely
there.
killing it. Thank you, Jeremy. We
And
appreciate you.
the videos, every time he sends them to me, I die laughing because they're just so good. Like it's just awesome. So, um, and then yeah, we had a couple topics tonight that we want to talk about. We're gonna try to keep it light and fun for 4th of July. We know that you guys probably don't want to dive into some tech specs and stuff like that. I'm hoping next week to bring back the WRX files. But being that we had Trent and Teeter on last week, and then we have 4th of July this week, I didn't really want to bog any of the episodes down with some of this stuff. So, but I was going to ask you, Dave, Trent and Teeter, we had him on last week. It was a great episode. I loved it. It was such a good conversation. I thought everything was awesome. What'd you think? What'd you take away from it?
Trenton's a master of his craft, respectfully, and you can tell that. And the attention to detail, I think, is very clear. When you watch that episode, and you really understand that he wants to do things the right way, and we're kind of in the same boat to where there's the metaphorical sense if somebody wants us to duct tape their engine back together, we'll respectfully decline, and it's not to say we don't want to help people out because we genuinely do. However, we do feel very adamant about doing someone a disservice, just slapping something together, so to speak. And our main goal is when it comes to certain things to make sure that policies, like a car doesn't leave, 5 minutes after the last bolt is checked and the car hasn't been road tested or anything. You can definitely sense that with Teeter, and they're definitely doing things the right way. And I can't get over that video he posted the other day of his parking lot. That was just absolutely epic, to say the least.
I have
Humbly,
to
we
say,
don't have the same kind of space to a point. At the same time, though, we do have special accommodations for any one of our kind of long tenured engine build kind of projects like that. But no, to see his growth, it speaks volumes, and you don't get to where he's built without the hard work. And I think everyone doesn't often see that, as at a certain stage where someone is getting a bunch of referrals and things like that, that's predicated a lot on them doing the right things. And that's definitely what I believe they do.
yeah, I said it in the episode, but I have to say, like, his social media, it's like the stuff that they put out is hilarious. They obviously put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into the videos they make and the work and like that's how much effort they put into stuff that is outside of their work, you know? Like they just I feel like ever since I met Trenton, like when he first had a shop and he came on as a sponsor, like he was talking about opening up the warehouse and doing tuning. And I just feel like, you know, over the years now, I mean, I've been doing this at least for like 10 years. I mean, I've been able to see his shop grow and like the stuff that he's done. And I'm just like blown away at the growth and like where he's gotten to. And like, he's just one of those guys. He's driven, he puts out a good product. People are constantly looking for him. They want to work with his shop. And I just think that's like such a great thing to have.
Yep, I agree. You don't grow a business to that level if you're doing things wrong.
Yeah.
You know, if you're ripping people off, and that's not how this community works. And I think that fortunately the Subaru community is incredibly tight knit on a whole, and we have a way of weeding out the ones that, you know, don't belong here, if you will.
Yeah. I think yeah, it was a great episode. I loved it. We had a good time. And we hope to bring on some more guests in the future here. I actually did speak to someone recently who was telling me that we might be able to get him on. I don't want to reveal it just yet, but he is somebody who did a Subaru giveaway recently that was quite a build with a K series engine in it. So you know, that was a fun conversation, and I was kind of hoping to get him on soon. We're planning some big stuff coming up, but um,
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump into our first topic. And before we do that, I'm just going to give you a little ASMR here. There has been a lot of conversation around Subaru opening or possibly putting out a new car, a new STI, a new WRX, something of this nature. If you guys remember, if you were following one of our earlier episodes where we talked about what if Subaru had a luxury brand, we were talking about the possibility of a Subaru wagon. And I'm going to just put this picture back up because we have shown this before. But this is what Dave and I kind of came up with as a concept as Subaru making a wagon. We both love this. We both thought this was a great design, great idea.
Take my money.
Yeah. And so what's funny is we did this not knowing that this picture that Subaru put out that we talked about a couple episodes ago was going to come out. And so it kind of looks like this car. And so, you know, now it's becoming very real that this is a possibility. And so, what we have seen now, I'll show you, is Subaru themselves actually put a post out that says from Subaru Motorsports USA, what if the Subaru WRX ARA 25 was sold as a road car? And this is the photos that they posted. Now, obviously, this would not be what they would put out as a production car, right? Like,
Of course.
but at the same time, right? They're they're any car that Subaru would put out that would have a wing like that would be an STI edition. There would not be a WRX that they're going to put this wing out on. At least I believe that they wouldn't do that just for their own brand name. Because once you
I
put
mean,
a
they're
wing,
also again, this rendering brings back the multiple hood scoops, which has yet to be seen for a number of years.
yeah, yeah, I think that like yes, in a perfect world where like you know you could own something like this as a street car would be awesome. But we have seen Subaru do roof scoops before. You know, it did
Yep.
happen. The bug eyes had them. So I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see them do it. It would be really cool on a newer car to see them put in that feature. But, you know, I think that there's options. There's a lot of options here. They're working with the new body style. They haven't really pushed it. They put out one version, which is the version that we know. And I think that they could definitely up it if they put out some more features for it and made an STI version. So,
Agreed.
and I think too, honestly, like my whole vision for Subaru is that if you go to an event, if you go to Wicked Big Meat, if you go to Boxer Fest, if you go to any of their other big events, you see how many people are still there. How many people are still buying WRXs and STIs and people that are importing them now because that's an option. Like, how are they not making this? Like, how are they not pushing to make these cars? There's clearly a large amount of people that want them. So
Well,
as
and
we
what did
keep
we talk about on the last episode? You know, it's kind of, or I think it was the episode before actually, but it's the Big Mac or the McRib,
oh, the McRib, yeah.
which Jeremy made amazing video about. It's the McRib. They take it away to bring it back every year. They say they're never going to bring it back.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
And what's interesting is now I saw something on Reddit today that somebody posted this, which, funny enough, is almost the exact photo of the RSTI that you and I put together. So I find it hilarious because if you compare the two, they're very close. But
Oh yeah.
somebody posted this and said apparently it's going to get announced later this year, which I was like, I don't know who this person is, and clearly it's Reddit. Take it with a very large grain of salt, as somebody said, baited by the WRX post or whatever. There's a lot of speculation that Subaru's trying to put something together. And I think that it may start to become a reality. Like, there may actually be wagons coming back. And like, you know what I've been thinking about is that if you look at Subaru's history of wagons, right? Like, they were putting all these wagons out. They didn't in the beginning, and then they had the first I think it's the GF body that came out, like wagon style
Yeah.
for at least the Impreza. And then the WRXs, they kind of continued them, and then they took a break, and now I think is like the perfect time for them to come back into the hatchback and the wagon kind of game, you know?
Well, we have so many other manufacturers, I think, stepping or have stepped into that space.
Yeah.
Um, you look at the Focus, you know, and all these other manufacturers that are getting into the hot hatch kind of market, if you
Dude,
will.
the Corolla, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that car is selling great. From what I've seen, a lot of people own them. I've seen a lot of them on the road. People like a hatch, you know?
It's
Um,
practical.
dude, it reminds me of um the Velosters, the body style, at least looking at this picture.
Yeah. Good point.
Um
I mean, that goes to show you multiple manufacturers are starting to embrace that hatchback mentality, if you will.
yeah. I don't know, man. I'm just really torn. I really hope that they do it, but I also don't want to get my hopes up and have them take away any chance of this happening. But I'm being hopeful.
I
To
also
me,
wonder how much of this is, you know, AI driven on a level. Not saying AI is promoting it, but I feel like, you know, with the internet being where it's at, kind of questionable, let's call it, in these current days. I've seen, I don't know about you, plenty of false posts that said, "Oh, this video or this movie, let's say, the third, sequel, is coming out up to this movie," and it's not real,
yeah.
but it's convincing.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think AI is definitely that's the whole thing with AI, right? Is that everybody's got a vision of what they wish could be made, and now they're able to actually put together a visual and kind of create what they want. This
And
may
if
be
somebody
just
posts something on Reddit and goes, "This is the new release teaser," is it really?
yeah. I mean, I get it. Like, this may be an actual possibility, but yeah, if these come out, I'm selling my WRX immediately, and I'm getting one.
I want one too.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, so we'll see what happens. I know we've been speculating a lot on it, but I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen with this and where we're going to
I
go.
agree.
Um, Now I told you I wanted to play a little bit of a game. We were talking about it beforehand, and I told Dave that I wanted to play a game called Mod or Nonsense. Basically, the way that this is gonna go is I'm gonna give
Oh,
you an item, and you are gonna tell me if it is a mod or if it's nonsense. I think some of these are pretty good, so I'm excited to take your take on this, especially because you probably see all of these all the time. So, um, we're gonna start in performance. Um, Muffler delete, is that a mod or nonsense?
I would say the majority of cases are nonsense. Provocated on two reasons.
Mhm.
I have evidence to back my claim. The first being that you may very well be tampering with manufacturers, or rather, I'll even transcend that, engineered uh, exhaust back pressure, and that's really important to understand. And we won't get too technical on that tonight, but that's the first area where I think you could be effectively doing your car maybe a potential disservice. The next is something that I've found contention with, and I think I may get some hate emails here about it, but hopefully not. Um, as somebody who rides a motorcycle, and now that may be considerably a gray area for some because one of my motorcycles is electric, fully registered, insured, everything. Uh, However, with the electric, I've heard the arguments of loud pipe save lives and how, okay, well, my loud exhaust is letting people know that I'm there and people don't always see motorcyclists. Um, I promise I'm bringing this back around
I
as I say.
I use my exhaust to scare deer, so
Okay. And I think there is a level of modern day forward thinking where we are not woken up by the neighbor's really loud exhaust Harley, not to single anyone out, let's say starting up at 6 o'clock in the morning before he drives to work for 20-30 minutes and warming up. I think there is a place where we don't have to have an overly loud exhaust, and I think it kind of segue off topic, but like, the whole diesel category where guys are effectively, as they say, rolling coal. You ask any performance tuner and they will 100% unanimously agree that that is not the epitome of performance.
yeah,
And when you have black soot coming out of your exhaust pipe, diesel or non-diesel, irrelevant. Your car is not running optimally and not running efficiently, and you're just doing that for something else. And I think that when you have an overly loud exhaust that on a car or a bike, and not to knock everybody, but I think it comes down to whether or not you're just trying to evoke a reaction from people or actually truly gaining a performance gain.
yeah. I have one response to this. If you have active shutters in your muffler, like the active mufflers, if you're deleting that, it's a mod. If you're not, it's nonsense. So, because those flaps are gonna seize up, buddy, and they are not going to reopen, and that is a mod
Especially
if
on the
you're
East Coast.
deleting them. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
we're especially on the East Coast. I mean, fortunately, we don't have humbly any rust issues out here in Colorado, really.
yeah, yeah.
So a little bit more, let's call it tenure of time where that system will actually function. But you're right. Once that system seizes up, good luck.
Yep, that or the sensors go, like, or the actuators go that turn the flaps and stuff or whatever, and I'm like, I always see those, I'm like, delete. Just delete.
Yeah.
Here's a good one, turbo blanket.
So that's an interesting one. Well,
I've never
turbo blankets can definitely be beneficial.
yeah,
I think that there's a level where they can also be a hindrance, particularly if you encounter, depending on, let's say, location of your turbo, as well as other components and things like that that encompass that turbo. system. If you encounter an oil leak of any kind, gets under that turbo blanket, good luck.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Doesn't matter how fire retardant your turbo blanket is. Oil is flammable, and when oil soaks onto that turbo blanket, you will have a giant fireball. Trust me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
turbo shields are generally more advised. Not to say that everyone's going to have a turbo oil leak, but it can happen, and you'd rather prepare for the worst case scenario than over engineer something to being optimally efficient, like you're building a race car.
Yeah. Yeah, I think turbo blankets, it, it's the application, right? To me, like, yes, heat soak happens, whatever, but like there is a certain application where turbo blanket makes sense. And I feel like if you're putting it on a daily stock turbo car, nonsense. It's like, because these cars are designed to run as a daily vehicle perfectly fine, just the way they are. So if your first mod is putting a turbo blanket on, it's not a mod. You're just adding a blanket to your turbo. I think that once it starts to come into functionality and like you actually need to stop some of this heat soak like bad, or like, you know, you're having issues or something like that, like then it becomes more of a mod because it's a necessary piece to the car. So
yeah, I agree.
Which I was laughing before because this list makes me laugh, because a lot of these are really on the border of like, you every time that you think about it, you're like, well, maybe, because it's true. Like like certain applications are like, they're just funny, you know. It's like front mount intercooler on a daily, you know.
Yeah,
Is that nonsense? Like it depends on the car. It depends on if you're dailying 1,000 horsepower monster. That's up to you. But
exactly.
yeah. So let me throw this one at you. Boost gauge on a stock NA engine, even an NA engine. It is a gauge and it is functional.
Yeah, no, that one's a no-go. That one's a no-go. That one loses every time. Although I will sidebar to say that I've yet to do it, and I'm really intrigued because I personally just want one. Is the little boost pig that guys have done?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Whoever figured that out first, you deserve an award for that one.
um yeah. Speaking of that, real quick side note, do you have a mileage on the Baja?
Yes. I failed to mention that we were talking about kind of earlier. So as of officially, we're about 250 miles. It's been kind of a slow couple weeks here. We're actually transparently down a couple guys through vacation and other medical things. So unfortunately, we have not been putting the miles on the Baja that we usually would, but it's at right about 250. I actually checked it today.
Nice.
And I did also check the oil. No drop in level. We're still actually in, it was hard to kind of measure out of those jugs of Crisco.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit over the full mark still. So it's kind of hard to gauge, but we're still over the full mark a little bit.
Nice.
And there is absolutely no sign of metal in that oil yet. We've checked it. We've put it up on a piece of paper, you know, up to the light, and so far so good. No noises.
Awesome.
We even had a buddy last week come in, a personal friend of mine, because again, it's fully registered, but kind of a beater. And so personal friend came by this week and dropped off for an oil change, and I elected to give him the keys to it. And I was like, hey, go home, come back later this afternoon, we'll take care of it.
That's awesome.
And so he drove the Baja earlier this week, and so far no issues.
Did he know it was running on canola oil?
No, we didn't tell him.
That's awesome. Oh man.
He knows now though, although we did tell him after the fact. But no, actually, I didn't even think about it, and it was just kind of a natural reaction when you know, a personal friend comes by, and I was like, "Hey, take the shot, Baja. Here you go."
Yeah, no problem.
And
Here you go.
he came back later that afternoon, we talked for a couple minutes, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, by the way, that thing's running on canola oil."
Oh my gosh. Well, here's another mod or nonsense for you that applies to this. A catch can with no turbo. Now,
But
now,
why?
now, if you got canola oil, no, maybe that changes things. Yeah, cat.
But I would argue that the canola oil will be very easily consumable and burnable by the engine.
True.
And again, we're also provocating that, going off of some of the multiple or many comments in the thread about the canola oil, that it's probably burning some or apt to burn some through the piston rings and things like that, just due to the viscosity of it. Because as much research as we could do to find a very high viscosity canola oil, those things are very, very hard to procure, and not easily on the readyable market. So we elected to say, you know what, we'll go with our classic Crisco brand. Seems good enough for frying chickens. We'll see what it does to a Subaru engine with over 200,000 miles on it.
Yeah. Oh man. Now here's another one for you. Cold air intake in a flood prone area. So you're doing the intake and you're putting it down in the bottom of your fender, the bottom of your bumper, and you're pulling air from the ground, but you live somewhere where there's good amount of water.
I have a personal friend who experienced this firsthand.
Okay.
And he was driving a modified vehicle with a cold air intake that was 2 inches off the ground, let's call it. Hit a very big puddle and dip in the road, and shortly after the entire engine and car shut off. Fortunately, he was very much perfectly situated and was able to coast the car into a Pep Boys parking lot.
Okay.
In which case, he, being an automotive inclined person, he proceeded to take all the spark plugs out. He actually bought a can of WD-40 at the Pep Boys, sprayed it into his cylinders, cranked the engine over with the spark plugs out, and effectively evacuated that water. Lo and behold, that engine still ran afterwards. And years later, he actually wound up effectively giving me the car through a weird set of circumstances, and just having an electrical issue, long and short, that drove him up a wall. So he effectively dropped the car off with me and said, "Here's the car if you can figure it out."
Oh my gosh.
I'll never forget, though, that same time when I got that car, I actually got accosted by a actual SWAT team, in my apartment parking garage, because they thought I was parting a car out because I pulled the entire dashboard out of the car to diagnose the electrical issue. That's how far I'd gotten. I was like, there's a broken wire somewhere or something back here, so I have to pull the dashboard out. So I'm here in an apartment parking lot, and I pull the whole dashboard out. It's sitting in the other parking space next to me, and I'm in there upside down pulling wires out. And next thing I know, I have a SWAT team surrounding my vehicle and asking to see the registration that proved the car is mine, which fortunately it was.
Oh man, they come up, they're like, put down the dash.
I was like, the dash is over there. Put the screwdriver down. I'm like, okay, please. I'm just trying to fix my car, officer.
Yeah.
Apparently they got reports of somebody effectively, like, parting out a car,
Oh, I see.
or scrapping a car. I was like, no, I was like, officer, I'm going to keep my hands in the air, open the glove box, the registration's in the glove box. It has my name on it. And the glove box, by the way, is over there in the parking lot in the next spot. But you open the glove box, I swear the registration says my name, and here's my license and ID.
Dude, that's crazy. I got another mod to throw at you. Ready?
All right.
Drilled and slotted rotors on stock calipers and pads.
So that's an interesting one. It's not a one-sided defense because there is very true merit to uh, a slotted rotor. At the same time, without getting overly technical in a 20-minute divulgent conversation, uh, even professional motorsports uh, aficionados and the industry has started to step away from drilled specifically rotors, and the reason why is, and I'm not an engineer, but I've read a moderate amount on this topic, to where what happens when you have a hot brake rotor that has a hole drilled through it from end to
Oh,
end,
okay.
and you apply 2 brake pads to that brake rotor, all of a sudden you're encapsulating a trapped air through that hole. And that air
Okay.
is superheated. When I say superheated, 400 degrees sometimes.
Hmm.
And what effectively can happen is that air winds up having a pressure differential to where it pushes back on the pads. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, you're actually getting less braking efficiency with a drilled rotor. Now, the slotted idea actually does several things, one of which is increasing surface area, surely, and trying to dissipate heat, but also that's a small percentage. But the biggest thing is it's effectively cleaning the rotor surface from the brake pad material that is being embedded into it
Okay.
as the rotor circles around.
Hmm.
And so you have a self-cleaning effective, capability in that brake rotor, and that can be very much beneficial, less from a heat management standpoint, but from a longevity standpoint, to where that brake, or performance standpoint, to where that brake rotor is actually to perform better because it doesn't have a bunch of pad buildup that brake pad has to encounter before it hits that brake rotor, and then encompass or imparts friction onto that rotor.
Hmm.
So you'd rather have something that's, perfect world, you'd have 2 pieces of sandpaper that would grip together, and then you'd stop, but then you'd fly through the windshield with your seatbelt on and your seat attached to you with the bracket ripped off. You'd fly through the windshield if you had
Yeah.
2 perfect pieces of sandpaper for braking services.
My thought process has always been that stock brakes are made to work together, the pads and the rotors, and like it does its job well enough for the stock vehicle. I think that braking can always be better, but I think that if you go with a drilled or slotted rotor and you're putting the stock pads on the car, I wonder if the material is able to hold up to essentially rubbing on no longer a flat surface, but a surface that has like spots on it that are grabbing the pad material and essentially
That's
kind
a
of,
very valid point.
so,
And
yeah.
it's less on, to be fair, they've proven, and again, I'm not an engineer, but from a standpoint of like wearing pad material from the drilled standpoint, it's less prevalent. There may be a 0.1%, uh, percentile from the standpoint of a both a drilled and or a slotted rotor of a little bit increased wear, but the intention was obviously to mitigate heat, slash rather, when I say mitigate heat, hot brakes don't perform as well, they don't grab as well, and so it becomes that point to where if you can have brakes that operate on a cooler threshold, now you have a better braking performance. Well, unfortunately, they found that with the drilled aspect, and that's where you look at the again, don't just take my word for it. Look at, a lot of the race cars that are being, are driven right now in
Yeah.
most of the respective motorsports categories. They're not running drilled rotors anymore. They still
Yeah.
have slots in them, but they're not running drilled rotors anymore because of that. I may be misquoting here, but I believe the term is like out or off gassing, to where when you apply those brake pads to that rotor with those holes in there, that pressure differential in there actually pushes the pads backwards out and away from the rotor and
Mm.
diminishes your braking efficiency. And
Yeah.
that's what they found through a lot of really, really detailed research. I'm not talking, something that the automotive repair industry just, stumbled into a day.
Yeah.
We're talking like professional motorsports entities that have figured this out and said, yeah, we're not going to do the drilled option anymore because the cons outweigh the pros, simply put.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like cons versus pros has always been a problem for braking because like at some point you kind of overdo it and you're still not getting the braking that you want out of it, or you underdo it, or mixing and matching certain calipers with certain brakes. It's just like some things just don't go well together. And that's what I've always thought about drilled and slotted with the stock brake pads, is that they're just not a match, and like you really should upgrade everything if you're going to do it, and just make sure that you get the set that is meant to go with the matching rotor. So
Agreed. Upsizing is far more important, and you'll look at even certain manufacturers and for lack of manufacturers, teams, that are race teams in motorsport, sometimes they're encompassing 2 calipers
yeah, yep,
because it's all about surface area. And if you're really trying to stop a car on a dime effectively to where that thing will throw the driver in the strapped into the seat out the windshield, you're looking at surface area, and it just comes down to basic physics and math.
yeah,
How do you stop a car or a moving object that weighs XYZ in the shortest amount of distance?
yeah, I agree. I actually have another one that you reminded me of, something I used to actually own, and I'm going to show you a picture here. I wonder if you've ever seen this. I assume you probably have. I don't believe in this. I owned it. I was skeptical on it from the second I bought it. I, people explain it, but what do you think about this hood scoop? Is this a mod or is this nonsense? Have you ever seen the reverse scoop on these?
Actually, interestingly, I have not.
So I used to own one of
I'm
these.
struggling to understand the concept.
So essentially the way that they kind of played this out is that underneath the scoop there's ducting, almost like the way that your regular scoop has ducting that pushes it into your intercooler.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that this one worked is that it would duct that small port to push air towards the turbo to cool it. And then the big scoop was to essentially pull air out of the engine bay and like pull the air out. So it was kind of made for like a front mount intercooler kind of setup, at least I believe. But I had people that had said that you could
Okay.
run it as a regular one, and essentially the air would come up over and then be pulled into the engine bay, which is just nonsense. I think this whole thing is nonsense. There's no real application for a street car where a scoop like this should exist. So
I think the only merit here, excuse me, is I think encompassing an airflow to the turbocharger in a sense.
mm,
But there's also a limiting factor to that. And I think I may have, or may not have seen in the group somebody discussing something along these lines earlier this week about how in your exhaust temperature and your engine temperature are part of the design performance aspect in a sense. And to where if you all of a sudden start over engineering things beyond the scope of what everything else was, developed to build, I think that you're ultimately doing yourself a disservice in a sense. And I think that if this was, humbly put, the bee's knees, I think that you would have seen this on, not to say on production cars necessarily, but from a performance standpoint. I think that would have been derivative from. So just the likes of which that we have so many things that we've gotten from motorsport, from airbags to seat belts to ABS. Well, did they become mainstream? Sure, trickled down. Those are just 3 examples. However, I think that if you look towards motorsports and what they're doing, Humbly, these guys they're pushing the boundaries. They're trying to find extra tenths of a second, and um, that kind of segues into another previous episode we talked about was the cylinder 4 cooling mod, where if Subaru felt the cylinder 4 cooling mod was, you know, something that was beneficial to them running up Pikes Peak,
Mhm.
which is something local here to us in Colorado. I mean, that mountain plays no favorites, as they say.
Yeah. And
If Subaru felt that they needed to run a cylinder 4 cooling mod, they would have run it. And we have yet to really witness that and see that. And a lot of these vehicles are very, very publicized to where things like Fan Fest at Pikes Peak, where the hoods are open and things like that. You can go look around these cars and you can really see kind of uh, how they're building these things,
yeah.
these finely tuned machines. And if they were encompassing something like a reverse hood scoop, I have a hard time believing that there's merit in it. And with all due respect to everyone who thinks they know better than the engineers, maybe get an engineering job.
Yeah. Something that I think I've talked about on here before is I used to work for an NHRA driver, Alan Przensky, and he's one of the only NHRA drivers that still races a Dodge platform. So he has a Dart that, he's got a custom built Hemi engine that he runs. He's got 3 of them. And what is interesting about this is that sometimes designs change based on who has the rights to it.
Sure.
Chevy, everybody who races a Chevy in NHRA, there's that big hood scoop on the hood of the car, the one that sucks in a ton of air right into the top of the engine. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they look almost like a jet engine, those really big
Yeah.
scoop, you know? Well, because he races for Dodge, he doesn't have the rights to be able to run that scoop setup. So he had to basically get a redesigned setup where he has a snorkel almost that comes out of the front of the car and it goes all the way down to the bottom of the bumper. And so he picks up the air from the ground level and scoops it up into the engine that way. And so he,
Colder air?
well, yeah, but he also agreed that like the scoop setup that the Chevys have makes the most sense. You're funneling it directly into the carb. So it's like
Shorter
right,
distance.
yeah, and you're getting a lot of air because those scoops are massive. But he can't do that. So like they had to figure out a way around it and they had to redesign the car and figure out a way to still be able to perform against these guys without stepping on their rights and their patents and the things that they have. So, I feel like some of this, right, is that there are a million companies out there that make Subaru hood scoops. And some of these people are looking for different designs that don't step on other patents and designs and they,
Yeah.
something else to sell. But at the same time, like, if you're competing and you're trying to outdo another person, you can't use what they're using. Well, now you got to figure out something else. And that's how things like this are bred. You just never know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. So,
And on one level, that might stifle an innovation in a way, to where somebody could be utilizing the same platform and just find that extra, tweak or loophole, you know.
yeah.
I think that's sometimes a disservice. But another previous episode when we did Mark with Company 24 or 23, Mark with Company 23, they were he really enlightened me a lot to the patent kind of space where
Mhm.
there's a lot more that goes into it. And if you're that guy that, for lack of a better term, was a pioneer and saw the future, why should you lose out on, the I guess shaping the future in a way?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna try to roll through a couple more of these because I do have one more segment I want to get to. Um, STI wing on a base Impreza. I know this is a I know this is a well discussed topic.
To
Um,
each their own, man, I guess. But just know that everybody sees you and everyone's judging you.
so you're not a mod nonsense.
Yeah. Sorry.
Fender flares on stock wheels.
But why?
but why is not Mod or
I
not
feel like
so?
it's kind of similar. So we have an Outback XT that we built
Mhm.
and as a shop. And the Outback XT naturally has the fender flares, the wide body, so to speak. And it's interesting because we're in the Legacy GT Outback XT forum kind of group. And a lot of the Legacy GT guys, they wind up putting wide body kits on them, to make them
Yeah.
effectively look like Outbacks. And I always said that, like, funny enough, as someone who's a affinity for the Outback platform to a sense, there's something to be said about that wide body look, and I get behind it, honestly. I don't think it looks right though if you don't have the wheels and the right offset to support it.
Agreed.
That's the big key. If it
Here,
doesn't look right, it doesn't look right.
I,
Sorry.
I got another one that's really gonna grind you, I think. Carbon fiber hood wrapped in carbon fiber vinyl.
All right, I'm
Yeah. You have a
Why?
carbon hood wrapped in fake carbon vinyl.
But why? There's no reason. There's
So
no reason you should do that.
So this is what gets me. Carbon fiber hood, weight reduction, mod. Carbon fiber hood wrapped in vinyl. You're adding weight to a thing that you're putting on to reduce weight. Bad nonsense. It's like
I mean, I understand the small percentage of appeal about wanting to make the car look one color. Let's say if your car is white, you don't want a black hood.
Yeah. But you're just covering it in
Paint
more
it.
carbon.
Paint it. I'll say it. I'll go on record and say, paint it. You bought a carbon fiber hood, paint it.
Yeah.
If you really want to hide it and have the car look compliant, just paint it. We can all tell a wrap when we see it. I don't care how good it is. No offense. When you have your hood that's carbon fiber and it's wrapped, we know it.
Yeah. There was actually a post that a girl put up in one of the Facebook groups that she had a Subaru that was covered half in like oil slick vinyl, like that rainbowish looking color. But like the way it was wrapped was like it was like 30% of the car was kind of wrapped in a weird way. And she just got dragged like in the comments because it just looked so kind of weird the way that they wrapped it. It was like part of the trunk or something, and then it was like dead half of the car, but then it like wasn't. I don't know. The way it was wrapped was like crazy, but like people with vinyl now, you can put vinyl on anything and just kind of do whatever you want. So it's gotten kind of crazy now.
I guess my point was something that I heard earlier was or recently was really close to home, was about the expression that a customer is always right. Well, the customer is always right subjectively. And that's the other part of that statement. And when it comes to subjectives, yeah, if the customer wants a big wing, customer gets a big wing. If the customer loves it, that's what really drives it home for us. And I think that's what really encompasses why I built a Subaru only shop, was because I saw the level of beyond the brand loyalty was the level of uniqueness that people have across the Subaru platform.
It's
Whether
actually
it be lifting or lowering a car, it doesn't matter.
It's actually such a great community and a great like just brand, because Subaru is known for breaking the mold and people being able to be themselves with these cars. And it's a very low judgment place. I feel like in all car communities there's a lot of judgment, but I feel like with Subarus in particular, like I feel like they've already gotten this rap for themselves, and so the people that own them are like, yeah, whatever, they just
We're
don't
all
care.
outcasts.
Yeah, and I think that that's like the great part of that, is that like a lot of these people, they can just do it. They'll do whatever they want. So I've always liked that side of it. But
I agree.
yeah. Are you ready? Lambo doors.
As a child who grew up in the 90s, not to
Mhm.
age myself, but there is something to be said about, I think, that style and uniqueness and aspect. And I think that goes to what we were just saying about how if you're going to do something and execute it right and properly and really have a high level of attention to detail when it comes to executing something, that there is merit in that. Whether or not it be your personal individual taste, art's subjective. Some people look at a Van Gogh and say that's looks terrible.
True.
The same people will say a Monet is beautiful. And I think that when it comes to cars in general, not singular to Subarus, I think there's such a uh, cornucopia, first word that comes to mind, uh, of of people and what they envision. And that was something that really drove me into cars in the first place as an enthusiast, was seeing that some people want to build a DB drag racer. For anyone who doesn't know, that's decibel drag racing. These guys put 40 to 50 to 200 speakers into a van, or sometimes a Mini Cooper. And when I say blow the doors off the vehicle, they'll blow the doors off vehicles in 2 parking lots over. Um, and I think that was part of my upbringing, was seeing that kind of eclectic group of uh, misfits, in a sense, because I feel like that as not just automotive enthusiasts, but with any enthusiast group, you're going to find that you're with your people, and people that, whether or not they have the same vision that you do, more oftentimes than not, they can hopefully respect that vision and see that you're just building the car that you want. And that, I think, is really, really beautiful.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Lambo doors nonsense. Uh, uh, I'm gonna
If you
end
could
this.
do it right, although to
Yeah,
be fair,
yeah,
I've yet to seen it done right. So,
sure.
but maybe they're, I don't know. Hey,
Yeah.
don't count us out, Pat. Maybe we'll put Lambo doors on our Baja just to say we did.
You know what, dude? This Baja is getting more and more interesting, so I'm down. I would love to see a canoe running Baja with Lambo doors. My gosh. I'm gonna end this on a one that I think is very questionable. I see it all the time. It hurts me on the inside. I'm gonna do it as a package deal because I feel like I can't just give you one of these things. It has to be a package deal. I'm wondering if you even know already what I'm talking about, but 3 things: bolt-in roll cage with racing seatbelt and racing steering wheel with no airbag.
Okay, so there is merit with a bolt-in roll cage
Mhm.
from a performance standpoint, where you're stiffening the chassis. Beyond that, if you think that will have any conceivable impact on your safety and well-being, beyond a, let's call it, considerable 5% increase,
Mhm.
I think you're reaching for the stars. I feel like a bolt-in quote unquote roll cage, if you will, because we've installed some of them, no offense, are akin to putting on strut braces.
Well,
Do they
so
make a
what
difference? Sure.
I was gonna
Are
ask
they going to
you.
protect you the proper way when it comes to actually rolling that vehicle over? No, no way.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you're using it, right, in the same way that you would use strut braces, it doesn't really seem worth it, right? Because with the weight that you're gaining from adding a full, like, metal bar system in your back seat, like, yes, it stiffens the chassis, but you could also put a strut tower brace and a rear strut tower brace and just stiffen the chassis that way, and those things are pretty lightweight.
And I would
Um
argue that those, let's say, give you 30% of stiffening. If
Mhm.
what we're talking about, the bolt-in roll cage, gives you another 10%, is it worth it? You're
Yeah, I guess it
arguably
depends on.
better off going with a proper built roll cage that's properly tied into the chassis, in which case, honestly, you could take those strut braces and throw them in the trash.
Yeah,
Because when you have a proper roll cage built in your car, those strut braces are irrelevant. They're a moot point. They don't actually make any difference. Your car is as stiff as a brick because the
yeah,
car can roll over off of Pikes Peak Hill Climb and save the drivers inside.
true. Yeah, I think the thing that the reason I have to put this in a package, right, is because if you've ever seen the pictures of the accidents after these things happen, that
Mhm.
bar that is supposed to be a solid bar is now in a V shape,
Every
and
time.
basically the where the belts are just yanks forward, the bar bends, and these people end up eating a steering wheel that has
Mhm.
no airbag in it, and they end up just like not understanding. That's the problem, right? You don't understand how a car crashes until you crash the car. And I feel
It's
like
violent.
not only is it violent, like it happens very fast, and you don't know until you're in it what's going on and how to handle it. And I feel like when you see the aftermath and you live it, like like, oh crap, this is how this goes. When
Yep.
when I was 18, I had a 98 Blazer that I totaled into a telephone pole. The pole snapped in half, and it happened like that. I was not even like, I didn't even recognize what was happening. And then all of a sudden I heard bushes and boom, I hit it so fast. It was like crazy. Um, and I just think that like with these setups, like modification wise, yeah, I mean, those steering wheels are a mod if you're racing and like you have a proper racing wheel and you have the proper roll cage with the proper belts. But I think that the bolt-in like harness bar or whatever, I think that those harness bars are more dangerous than they are good because people don't know how to use them and people
I would
aren't
agree. I would
trusting
agree.
them.
And all of a sudden, if you get into an accident with like we talked about, a strut brace, those things will fold
Yeah,
indefinitely. They're gonna
yeah,
fold. Do you want a folding suspension component inside of your vehicle in the inside the cabin?
yeah.
Just saying,
Not to,
and to the other latter point about the steering wheels,
yeah.
there's a subjective point there to where at the same time, a steering wheel that has an airbag can present inherent dangers beyond the impact. Uh, Simply put, when I went to years back, when I went to a driving school, uh, before I got my license, they were teaching you, instead of the whole 10 and 2, you're supposed to keep your hands below 3 and 6 at all times. You never put your hands up here because the airbag goes off up there. So you keep your hands out here. And I was taught the shuffle technique. You can look this up. So when you make a corner, you're supposed to do this and shuffle the wheel between your bottom hands and not do this because, and I was taught this in driving school, if you are turning in a corner like this and you get into an accident, guess what happens when the airbag goes off? Now your
Wow.
hands are in the way, and this is way more dangerous. When the airbag was not designed to go off with your hands like this. The airbag was designed to go off with your hands like this at 3 and 6. And so you're never supposed to take your hands and move them up here. This, we all do it. Not allowed in driving school. You'll fail if you do this because if the airbag goes off, hit it in your face. And now you have extra bones and fragments and an extra body entity going into your face before that airbag is deployed. And the airbag was designed to not hit anything but a clear obstruction to your face so you don't go through the windshield.
So what I was always taught is that you were always at 10 and 2 because
Yep.
when the airbag goes off, it's supposed to blow your hands off the wheel as you get hit with the airbag. But it's
But the
interesting
problem
because,
was people started doing this.
well, and I never
People,
thought about mid-turn. Like you just always think you're going to get in an accident like this, but it's not true. Like you get in an accident doing anything. So
while you're
I
turning.
literally, you're just like, I could see it. That's crazy. Never thought about it that way.
And so that's why the NTHDS or whatever decided, nope, We no longer teach this. We don't teach overhand turning. We teach underhand turning.
I
You
something
shuffle the
else.
wheel left and right under your hand. You never cross. I was taught to never cross the 3 and 6 plane with my wheel. Now, that's not to say I don't, but because it feels weird to hold the wheel like this, but that's what I was taught by the National Highway Safety Transport Authority.
Yeah. Something on the same topic that just to give everybody anxiety for the rest of their lives. Um, Something an ex-girlfriend always told me, because she was in a really bad car accident where, like, there's 5 people in the car and it like rolled and everything. She said that when you read on the, usually it's on the passenger side, but on the visor, if you read that little warning label that's up there, it says that the safest place to be for the airbag is the furthest possible distance from it. So, she would always ride around with her seat all the way back so that when the airbag comes out, it doesn't just blast you like from 2 feet away, like right there. And it's crazy because you see a lot of people that they'll drive like this. They're like on the dash, and they're just like, like that
And
airbag.
that I think that's one thing that's a good point. I never thought about that, but I wonder if that's often an understudied statistic to where there are transparently shorter drivers out there in the world. Luckily, I'm not hugging my steering wheel, per se. I'm not on the smaller spectrum on that sense, but I'm definitely in that middle ground. I'm not all the way forward. I'm not all the way back either. And yeah, I've always wondered where that airbag, what that airbag impact is and how that's calibrated, because maybe on the newer cars, they have it calibrated. If your seat's further forward, they don't blow the airbag as hard. But last time I checked, these things are controlled by a CO2 cartridge. And when they explode, they explode.
Yeah. And the other one is the guys who ride around and they're like, the airbag, I don't think ever makes contact. They're
Yeah, they're
basically
probably
laying
fine.
down.
It's just like,
Yeah, that always kills me. That, like, I get in some customers' cars sometimes, and I'm like, wow, how do they drive like this? Like, you can't even see out the window. They're just so far back. Like,
oh, and I'll formally apologize to any customers who follow the podcast if I've had to move your seat forward. I'm sorry.
oh man, I had a woman one time. She said, if my seat is not exactly where I left it, I'm never coming back here again. And I went out there and the seat was so far forward that we could barely get in the car. And so my tech
Call
actually,
me.
yeah, this was at an old shop, but one of my techs that got in the car, he was so far forward that he was having trouble hitting the pedals and they actually tapped the side of the building. We had to fix it. And so what I did is I took a measuring tape and I measured the distance from the front of the seat to the dash, and then I measured the distance from the seat down to the floor, and I had like all the measurements written out, and I was like, all right, so now we can move the seat, and then I'll have to just remeasure everything and put it back exact. This lady picked it up and she's like, I knew you guys wouldn't move my seat for me. And I was like, nailed it. Like, yes.
Good job. Good job.
Oh, man. The things that some customers put us through is crazy. Well, Dave, we're already an hour and, hour plus into this. I do still, it's the 4th of July episode. I do still want to hit our final topic. So, Dave and I were talking a little bit about video games and video games that have Subarus in them and racing games and things like that. Um, and basically, if you've ever played a racing game like Need for Speed, Forza, any of these games, they always start you off with like 3 to 4 options of cars that you get to start the game with. They're never the top of the line cars. It's always kind of a pretty cool car that is like NA or like whatever. You can upgrade it later, And to me, like, this is kind of like your starting Pokemon. Like, you kind of get to pick from one of the options, and that's what you start with. And so I wanted to kind of get your starting picks of how you would want to start a game like Need for Speed. I'll give you my
Okay.
starting picks, and we'll kind of compare. And before we do that, I just have to say, I will literally do anything on this planet to bring the game Blur back. Blur is this like racing game. It's like a Mario Kart but with real cars. It's I have it on the 360 and I can tell you I play this game like 3 times a week. It's like amazing. It's so good. And honestly, such a shame. Activision made it. They need to make it Blur 2. They didn't even port it to the Xbox One. So mad about that. And I just don't understand what the problem is. And I'm done venting now. So I'm gonna say my starting lineup of cars. I picked 4 because I really couldn't not include a Subaru in the lineup. So I had to kind of shuffle a couple around. But my first pick, it would be a Toyota Celica all-wheel drive, the GT4.
Okay.
I think it's a badass car. I think that it's not upgraded enough that it's like too much for starting a video game, but I would love a Celica in that lineup.
Yeah.
Um, my second pick would be an Eagle Talon. I think that is a very nice starting car. I think that again, it fits in that realm of like, the Mitsubishi 3000 GTs and the Talons and the Eclipse and the Celica and all these things.
Yeah.
Really love that. My third pick would be a Lexus IS 300 with the one JZ in it. I think that those cars are awesome, and I think that it's low powered enough that it would still be a nice like starter car to kind of race with, and I think those cars just handle well, and it wouldn't be a bad starting car.
Yeah.
And then out of all the Subarus that you could start with, I chose a Subaru Legacy Spec B. I think that
Okay.
would be a pretty dope starter Subaru to rock to start a game with. So,
That's a good lineup, man. I guess it depends on like where you're trying to start from like a power standpoint, from any given
mhm.
game. Um I pretty much kind of thought when you mentioned the initial idea, my initial three would probably be a 22B,
Yeah,
starting out with Subaru. I think
it's
that would
awesome.
be a great starting point. And then I thought about my years ago, we used to work on BMWs and the BMW 1 Series. I think that would be a kind of comparable platform.
Yeah,
Has a lot of kind of similar accolades. It's rear wheel drive, but again, gives people different options when they're kind of figuring out what they want.
yeah,
And then the last one that I came up with, again, kind of going on like the all wheel drive, the rear wheel drive, or the maybe front wheel drive, was a Focus. The Focus RS. I
yeah.
think that would be a really cool kind of
That would be a good one.
starting car. Kind of, and they're all kind of in a similar kind of platform of power standpoint to where they're not. They all have their pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they're all just like good performance vehicles stock that like you could really like compete with if you needed to, like depending on the class and stuff. Like it would be a good car to just like pick off the rack kind of. Um I forgot to mention one of my favorite cars of all time, which I think would make a perfect addition to this lineup, is a BMW Z3 M3 hatchback, which they call the
Equally,
clown
yeah, and
shoe.
that's kind of why I threw in the 1 Series because I feel like it's kind of
Yeah.
not a lower powered, but I think it's an entry point, for that
Yeah.
platform.
I think that lineup is great, honestly. And I didn't really add anything other than just Japanese cars, but but I'm realizing that now. But I would say that a BMW and a Focus RS. I didn't expect both of those from you, so I think that's a good lineup. Yeah, you got European, American, and you got Japanese. That's awesome. Cool.
Trying to hit the marks, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly think that like some of these cars I've definitely picked in games as like a starting vehicle or whatever. See,
Yeah.
I used to love Midnight Club because Midnight Club LA especially, like it was just like you get one of these lower powered cars and you just immediately get in the shop and you start upgrading and changing things, and like that was one of the first games that I really learned on with upgrading cars. And then from there,
Oh
once you
yeah.
went like Forza and iRacing and stuff, like that's when you really get more into like the tuning and all that kind of thing. So
Oh yeah.
I think that, yeah, iRacing is something I'm not too familiar with. I know that there's a lot of performance and
There's a
people race.
whole community behind that, man.
Yeah, I know people race for money on there. I've seen a lot of videos. And yeah, I mean, I think you were talking about you dabbled in it a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think that as far as us making video games, we would be pretty good at it, and that's what I
Yeah.
have to take away from this. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of run through that. I thought that'd be kind of a fun topic, but we appreciate you guys sticking with us. We hit like almost I think 325 subscribers on YouTube. We're
Yeah.
at almost 100 on Spotify. We're really trying to just keep everybody entertained and keep putting out good content every week, and we love seeing all the feedback. I really hope you guys comment and let us know what you guys think is a mod or nonsense, because this was a very fun conversation and I'm interested to see
Yeah.
what people think on these topics. And yeah, Dave and I are going to go enjoy our 4th of July. We hope you guys do too. And we will see you guys again next week with possibly a guest. I don't know. We'll see. But stick around and you'll find out. All right. Later.